Welcome to this episode of Business Unzipped. I am joined by Tim McCleary, who is Managing Director of the Involvement Practice. Hello, Tim.
Hi, Jem.
You all right?
I'm good. It's good to be here.
Good. Why don't we start with you just doing an introduction? Because no one can introduce themselves better than you.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, as you mentioned, I'm the Managing Director of the Involvement Practice. We are a culture change activation firm based in Charlotte, North Carolina, and we focus on helping individual teams and companies grow by helping them build stronger cultures.
That is the perfect elevator pitch. I need to work on mine. That was great. And actually, that's what we have in common. We're both very driven by creating sort of positive culture and what it can do for an organization.
Yeah,
So
it's
what
just
do
so
you
important, isn't
think?
it?
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think actually makes a workplace culture like positive?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And so I'm going to answer your question, but let's do something for a second, if you don't mind. And your
Yes.
listeners can do the exact same thing. Think of a think of a place that you worked that had a really positive culture and name two things that helped it be positive. What comes up to the top of your mind?
Am I answering?
Yes, and your listeners are thinking about this at the same time.
Okay, so two things that make it a positive work for me. It is my boss,
Yep.
and second is feeling like it's a safe space.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So what we find in our work is that there are sort of three buckets that can make a culture really positive. You nailed it. The boss, the leadership. Is the leadership, do they have a vision? Do they communicate that vision clearly? Do they provide candid feedback to their team members? So that's being honest about what's going well and what needs improvement. Where there's times to improve, we need to do that in private, not in front of everybody. Some people subscribe to positive reinforcement in front of everybody. That's kind of the call of the leader. I see you shaking your head.
No, no, I think praise in public,
Yes,
but
yes.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly. But certainly not if we're going to give feedback, that has to be one-on-one and has to be private. Empowerment makes a huge difference with a leader, whether they really truly trust their team and can empower them to do their work. We use something called freedom within a framework, which I can come back to if you like. But that's what allows us to create an environment where people can be empowered to do their best work. And I think creativity is huge. I often say that creativity is taught out of us. So by the time we
yeah,
reach probably age 5 or 6, depending on where you are in the world and how you attended school, we generally are taught the right and wrong answer. So that creativity, that abundance of creativity we have as children, tends to get taught out of us. And yet, I really truly believe it's in each one of us. Sometimes we just have to reconnect to it. So strong leadership is one. Strong team. Do you trust your coworkers?
yeah.
Do you feel like you can collaborate with them? So we can set ego aside and really collaborate. And do you feel connected to them? There's a debate going on. I used to be an advocate of bringing your whole self to work. And the more I'm hearing the debate, the more I'm questioning that, because I think
Okay.
there's value in bringing our whole self to work. I think it enriches the team when we do that. But I can also appreciate that some people want to be a little more private than that.
Yep.
And I'll notice when we're doing a culture diagnostic, when we're trying to understand a culture, paying attention to what's on someone's desk. Now, the way you and I are talking to each other right now, we're doing it virtually. I'm seeing you in a video box. I can pick up very few cues in your environment. I can only see what's
Hmm.
behind you. But if I'm sitting face to face with somebody, looking at what's on their desk can speak volumes. Do they have pictures of a significant other, children, pets? Is their space devoid of anything that is personal? Is it all just simply business stuff? What does that say about that individual? And do they want to keep their personal and
Open.
work life very, very separate, or do they want to be open, as you said? So there's a piece to that as well. I think we have to create space for people to make that decision. Are they going to bring their whole self to work? But can we get them to bring more of their self to work? Can we encourage that by creating, I think the term you used was a safe environment?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that
A
can
safe space.
a safe space. So that can open up people feeling more comfortable, and that comes with trust. We can't just simply say this is a safe space. That
No.
has to be proven over time. And in fact, at the involvement practice, we don't use that term specifically because we can never guarantee, especially when we're working with a team, that a space is going to be safe. There may be something I say or do as a facilitator that triggers you. So I don't know those things and I can step right in it. But we can create a space for people to come together and explore and connect and build that trust. So strong leadership, strong team. And then the third thing I think that's so important is strong purpose. This is what bounces us out of bed in the morning. And we see that more and more with different generations. The younger generations are demanding it. But Jim, you know that every generation has looked for purpose. It is what
Yeah.
motivates us. So the fact that we relegate that to millennials, I think is unfair. I think every generation seeks a sense of purpose. We may articulate it a little bit differently, but having that reason to jump out of bed in the morning and make an impact, I think is so important. So when I look at a positive culture, I think of those three things as being kind of the bedrock of places that I would personally say that I work that were positive.
Yeah, I completely agree. And when I say safe space, I mean exactly what you were discussing there in terms of building connections with your team, having that environment where you can have agreements but also disagreements, and you can have that space where you can have those discussions and then come out as a collective group, a bit like what you do at home,
Yes.
essentially. But
Yeah.
I connection to me is really important, and actually building those connections. And as you say, it needs to be as comfortable as the other person is happy with. So they may not want to share everything, but the more you know about each other, the more you build those connections and the more that you can work collaboratively with each other.
Hmm.
It's very hard to disagree with a human being.
Yeah.
It's very easy to disagree with just a job title.
So
So building those connections is really important.
I love that you said that because we often say at the involvement practice, we want to help people see each other as human beings, not just as colleagues or coworkers.
Exactly. Exactly. And you mentioned the word trust.
Hmm.
How important is trust in a culture? And I think more important than that, because the work that we do, how do you actually measure that?
Yeah. Yeah. So trust is critical. It's the underpinning that supports the sharing of ideas and collaboration. And we know that when people feel the environment, that it is a culture of trust, they're more likely to share ideas and take risks. And when I say risks, I mean positive risks, that they're going to take big swings to solve problems. We know actually through neuroscience that when people feel like the culture is built on trust, they're more likely to share those ideas. Those ideas are then going to invite collaboration. And that helps not only the individuals and the teams grow, but that helps the contribution back to the company. So there's a really positive knock-on effect of working to build a culture of trust inside an organization. We know that cultures that are built on trust have 50% more productivity. So that's a huge number, 50% more productivity. So when I say it's really critical that we work on building trust inside organizations, it has a significant impact on
Mm-hmm.
the company. You asked about measuring, and in the past, I would have answered this question very differently. I would have said, well, we've got to insert some specific questions into the annual employee survey. We've got to
Yeah.
put them in pulse surveys, um, or we've got to, after we do a team offsite, where we take our team out of the office and work with them together. I know there's different terms around the world for an offsite,
Yeah,
but
we
an
call them away days.
away days, exactly. So we want to measure the impact of an away day as well. But we also know that when we ask people questions about an experience they just had, they're likely to tell us what we want to hear. They're going to be positive about it. And there is a halo effect for a few days after an experience like that, where
Yeah.
they're going to be pretty pumped up and they're going to tell us what went well and maybe not be as honest about the things that they would like to see improved. But there's a way we can actually get around that. And it's through neuroscience. We have partnered with Dr. Paul Zak. He's based at the Claremont Graduate University out in California. He's part of our extended team. And Paul has been studying trust for more than 20 years. And he has moved from the things of, sci-fi movies where you would see those caps that people would have on with electrodes
Yeah.
on there. And that was actually measuring brain activity. Well, fast forward, he's got it all down to our smartwatch. So I can turn his app on. It's called Six, S-I-X. I can turn it on my watch and my phone. If you don't have an Apple Watch or another smartwatch, you can use a sport band that measures activity. And without getting too technical, because he's the best one to explain it, it's essentially measuring our heartbeat, but that's not what he's actually looking for. He has algorithms that break down what's happening with our heart when we're going through an experience. And what he's looking for is whether oxytocin and dopamine are being released into our blood system. And by
Whether
combining
you're enjoying our conversation.
exactly. In fact, if I don't have it on right now, but if I turn Six on, in fact, it's notifying me right now on my phone to turn it on. It will tell me at the end of our conversation, Jem, how much did my brain enjoy our time together? Now, that's not a reflection on you. It's how much I'm engaged with you in this process.
Mm-hmm.
But it might also come back and say, you're a little frustrated during that conversation. Now, that could be very natural, not because I'm frustrated with you, but because you asked me a question and I'm thinking through 3 or 4 possible answers that would all fit the question. But my brain is really active trying to sort through what would be the right answer or the best answer that would be beneficial to your listening audience to hear.
Yeah.
So my brain might show signs of a bit of frustration sorting through that. But it will tell me at the end of the day, it maps back to my calendar, and it will tell me, do more of this. In your day, you did this, do more of that. Your brain loved that. Your brain was on fire when you were doing that. Do less of this or change the environment you do that in. So I'm making this up. Let's say I have to have a difficult conversation with a team member. My brain may not love that. They're tying Six into not only what they're picking up from and putting through this algorithm, but they're also using AI to make suggestions. So it may come back and say, hey, Tim, the next time you have to have that conversation or a conversation like that, go and find a comfortable spot. Go find somewhere that's quiet, that's maybe a little more peaceful for you and the individual you're speaking to. So it gives you this really good, useful feedback on ways that you can go through your day. Yeah, I was blown away. When I met Paul, we've known each other about 2 years now. Been reading his books. They're incredible reads. He writes the way he communicates in person. Very charismatic guy, really cares. He's authentic. He's vulnerable. Having met him, I said, Paul, where have you been all my life? Like, I've been doing this work for almost 20 years, and he's figured out how to measure the impact of what we do. Even though you and I know that our work is impactful, we can see it when we finish working with a team. But he likes to say our brains don't lie.
People love data.
People love data, and this is bringing science into what we do. So if we take that one step forward, we can actually measure a pre-experience, an experience, and then a post-experience. So if I'm going to be working with you and your team, let's say, we can have people running this app for a couple of days prior to us working together. That gives us a baseline of the level of trust across the team. Then we can bring you and the team together and put you through a number of experiences that we designed to build culture based on what we know from a culture diagnostic, where the issues may lie. And then we can do a post measurement. So we have that
Amazing.
baseline. We can see real time. This is the amazing thing, Jem. We could even, while we're facilitating, if we're seeing that trust is waning, we
Change it
can
around.
shift. Yeah, right in the moment. We've never had the
Wow.
ability, other than reading faces, which you
Yeah.
know can be dangerous because
Yeah.
sometimes
Poker
body
face.
language isn't 100% accurate.
Gosh, that is just amazing. And I would be fascinated to see less so in the moments of joy and celebration, because I feel like that's always more visible. But when you
Yeah.
can see teams going through a challenge or an issue that they're trying to overcome together,
Mhm.
how that can shift based on, like you say, the environment they're in, how it's being led, all of those kinds of things. But that is
Mhm.
amazing.
And we've all had the experience of presenting something to a team and they may put a good face on. It may be
Yeah.
terrible news for them, but they're engaged
Yeah.
and nodding their head and yep, because they want to be seen as a team player. But then they leave the room and they're like, oh my gosh, what is happening?
Totally. Yeah.
So imagine if we in real time can see the reaction. Same thing when
Yeah.
we, as a public speaker, and you're talking to an audience, it's sometimes very hard to get feedback from the audience because they're thinking. And so generally when we're sitting with a whole bunch of people, we don't have a lot of facial expression. We're just part of the crowd.
Yeah.
This just gives us insights we've never had before.
Gosh, that is really, really life changing in the world of actually being able to measure culture change.
Yes. Yeah, isn't it? It's exciting stuff.
Yeah. All through an app.
All through an app. Yep.
My gosh. Okay. I'll have to read more into that. Is it available everywhere? Or
It
is it
is.
something
Yeah.
that
You
you're
can,
rolling out?
depending on the device you have, you can download
Mm,
Six onto your device, and then also add it to whatever your wearable is. Yep, anybody can use it. And Dr. Zach wants to see this out worldwide. He really believes there's a connection to happiness. And that's one of the things, the reason it's called six is we need six positive experiences to offset one negative. We know this as parents, right? If you're constantly giving negative feedback to your child, that can be really detrimental. To counteract that, they need six positive pieces of feedback to
mm,
build them up. As
gosh.
adults, we're the same way. So his goal is to get people to use it even recreationally
Yeah.
to
Well,
look
I
at
was just going to say it can absolutely help with your personal life as well. So, they
exactly.
always say surround yourself, you're influenced by the five people that are closest to you. So it'd
Yeah.
be really interesting to meet those people one on one, have a conversation, and then go, oh, okay, maybe I need a new person.
We're going to freak
Or
all our friends out.
I need more of that person. Yeah,
That's
they're good
right.
for me. That's amazing.
Yeah, it really is.
Gosh, and I think one of the most influential people, I know we've touched on it before, is your direct leader, your boss, your manager.
Mhm.
How does leadership style impact workplace culture?
It has a huge impact. Just as you and I in that first question you asked, we both went to leadership, how important
Yeah.
leadership is. If a leader is too nice, you don't build trust. So we have leaders who fall into that trap. I want to be liked by my team. So I'm going to be the upbeat, positive person who's always giving praise. And I'm going to shy away from having those difficult conversations when their
Yes.
behavior is off. Um, and if you're too harsh, people won't stay in the organization. So there's that sweet spot in between. And it's finding that balance where we are honest with our team members. So when they mess up, we need to address it. We need to address it right away and be very direct. But that doesn't mean it's a personal attack.
Yep.
We're not saying you're a bad person. We're saying this behavior was not what we're looking for. So there's that careful balance between the two. And as we talked about earlier, it's giving. I think it's important to give praise and negative feedback or candid feedback privately. I think it can embarrass people when you
Yeah.
praise them publicly as well. So you have to understand the dynamic of that individual and what they're going to gravitate toward. But you also have to take a really genuine interest in your team members. So that goes full circle back to bring your whole self to work. I think leaning into what goes on outside the workplace, not prying into people's personal lives, but taking an interest in the fact that they have children or a partner, or they like to hike, or they have a dog that they go running with every morning. Things that you can connect back to that uh, show your humanness and your sincere interest in them as a human being as well.
Mm.
So if it's just fluff and small talk, that doesn't have a lot of impact, and people see right through that. But if I sincerely ask you, how was your weekend, and listen to what you're saying, and play some of what you're saying back, that's creating much more connection and interest in that individual. There's a great book, it's not new, called Radical Candor by Kim Scott. Yeah, you've read that.
Yep.
And her whole thing is care personally, but challenge directly.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned, there's a fine art there. It takes practice and intentionality to do that. We're not born leaders. I think, some people will say, oh, he or she is a naturally born leader. Well, we're really not. We tend to get promoted in our careers based on our technical proficiency at whatever it is we do. You get tapped then to lead a team, but that doesn't mean you're equipped to lead a team. And
Yes.
so
Yeah.
people tend to fall into one of those two categories, where you're overly nice because you want people to like you, or you're too harsh because you want them to fear you and just get the work done. You're not
Mm.
about the personal interaction. Finding that balance is really a learned behavior. It takes time
Yeah.
and it takes practice, like anything. That we have to have some candid conversations that may be really difficult, may not go well, to learn how to
Yeah.
be better at doing that. And we have to have opportunities to provide positive feedback, in ways that it may take us a while to get a little better at
It
it, so that
will.
it
And
is
actually, it goes back to your point about school, and how it actually doesn't gear us up for that, which is what the radical candor is about.
yeah,
You're taught in school to, it's yes, miss, yes, sir, listen when you're spoken to. And if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all.
right,
And then you go
right,
into the workplace and you're put in a leadership position. And sometimes you do have to say things that might not be deemed nice. And in terms of like leadership, I think there has definitely been a shift in terms of leading with kindness
mhm,
and compassion. And I think sometimes that can get confused with appeasing people,
yes,
which is not the same as being kind. So,
yes,
it's not kind to give your kids sweets before bedtime. You
right,
might be appeasing them, but it's not
right.
kind. And I think
No,
sometimes we do that as leaders. We get confused and we just want to keep our staff happy, but actually that's not the kind thing to do. We're not nurturing them, we're not helping them grow and teaching them the right way. And I do
yeah,
think those two things get confused.
I agree with you. It's, as you know, it is really a tough job to be a leader.
Yes.
I think many of us aspire to become a leader, but it's hard work. I saw a post on LinkedIn, from, I used to work at GE, General Electric Company, and somebody within the alumni channel put a post up not too long ago and said, brand new leader, very senior guy. He was addressing his new team, and somebody shot their hand up and asked him a question, and he paused and he said, I don't know the answer to that question, but I'm going to find out for you. So give me a few days and I'll find out. That is the strength of a great leader. Too many leaders would feel, um, maybe a bit exposed, maybe incompetent, by saying, gosh, I don't know the answer to that. The assumption is, well, you're expected to have the answer because you're the leader.
Yeah.
That was a really powerful response. I don't know, but I'm going to find out and I will get back to all of you so that you know as
Mm-hmm.
well. That's a leader who's confident and willing to lean in and learn, and listen to their team.
Absolutely. And that is a great example of how it's done right. Um, but as we know, not all leaders do get it right. So how can businesses essentially turn around what's deemed not positive, or the word is toxic, isn't it, at the moment? So how
It
can
is.
businesses turn that around?
Yeah, I think that the starting point is that leaders need to be authentically willing to turn it around. So it can be easy to say our culture's not great and let's fix it, but that comes from the top. We've talked about leaders over and over again in this conversation.
Yeah.
It
A
can be
big
lip
mirror just
service.
comes up.
Exactly, exactly. So if leaders are sincere about it, and when we, as the involvement practice, when we meet with a client, if we feel, and it's only happened a couple of times, but if we feel that a culture just isn't ready for what we do, we have a few times said this isn't the right time, but let's keep talking. And when it is, we're happy to come back and work with you. That's only going to frustrate them, and it's going to frustrate us because we're going to fail, and so will they. But when they are authentically open to addressing the issues in their culture, there is something we can do. And there was a CEO who called us a number of years ago. She was the head of a fast food company, and she just said, "There's something wrong in my culture. I don't know what it is. I do want to address it, and I hear you guys are pretty good at it." Now, she was sincere about it. She saw that something was going on, but she couldn't figure out what it was. It's much like wallpaper. We see it every day, and eventually it's just wallpaper. We
Yeah.
couldn't even tell you what the color is or what the pattern is of the wallpaper because we see it every single day. Culture can be that way too, that we just simply show up and it becomes wallpaper. It becomes in the background. To turn around a toxic workplace culture, we want to look at improving leadership ability. So very often that can be the source of where some of the toxicity is coming from, is in the leader's ability to lead, and breaking down some of the stuff we talked about with radical candor. Sometimes it takes restructuring and letting people go who are actually very toxic to the culture. If we can't coach them and help them to change their behavior, frankly, one of the best things we can do for them and for the culture is to help them move on into something that they'll be happier to do, or a place they'll be happier to work. Getting people into the right roles. I think sometimes we get assigned into a role because we're a doer and the manager assumes that, it doesn't matter where we plug you in, you're going to knock it out of the park. That can be really dangerous too. People can,
Yeah.
that can, really affect their ability to deliver when it's something that they don't really love doing or are not that interested in. Rebuilding or building trust, if trust is really eroded, is so critical to turning a toxic culture around. We've talked about an effective way to measure it, to get that baseline through neuroscience. And then we find often breaking down silos. So the silos form often when trust has eroded. They form when a team has gone through a lot of change in rapid succession. So I call it self-preservation mode, when people feel like we've had too many leaders, we've gone through downsizings, next leader comes in, and it's a whole new strategy. People put their head down, get their job done, but they're no longer collaborating.
Yeah.
And that can be a silo of one or a silo of a couple of people. We just need to survive this. The rest of you are on your own. That is not, of course, a healthy culture. And people aren't going to be happy showing up in an environment like that. So we've got to, we address it by doing a culture diagnostic, understanding what's really good about the culture, and let's elevate that. And where are the problems? And let's go after that. So when we design, an offsite is just one thing that we do. But when we design one of those, it's designed based on what we learn from that culture diagnostic. So there's every single experience that we build throughout a couple of days that they go through is to end at that point where we've improved the situation. We've directly addressed the issues that have been identified through the diagnostic.
That's really important. You mentioned that. And so when you're doing a heat map, I call them cold spots and bright spots. But sometimes we focus so much on what's not working, we forget to look at what is working well. So it's really important to have that balance. So I'm really glad you said that.
Yeah, right.
So at the beginning, you mentioned something in terms of a framework. What practices or initiatives does the involvement practice implement? Talk to me more about that.
Yeah. So our methodology is built on three steps: understand, own, and activate. When there's a change in the organization, or a change is needed in the organization, we want people to deeply understand the reason for it. It could be a pain point or an opportunity that sparks the change. The ownership comes in once they deeply understand the reason for the change. We want them to find the what's in it for me. How can I be part of this change? How can I own this and feel connected to where we are going as a team? And then the activation is getting them ready to actually do the hard work. At that point, we want to see behavior change. We want them to clearly know why this is happening, because people can go through the motions and they can tick the boxes and they can get it done, but that doesn't mean they're bought in. It doesn't mean the change is actually going to stick long term. So that's our base methodology. What I was referencing earlier is what we call freedom within a framework. That when people understand the mission, the vision, the values, the brand strategy, and the business strategy, imagine those being on the outside of a frame, we can now empower them on the inner part of that frame to make the right decision even when no one's looking over their shoulder. Now that takes work to do, and we don't subscribe to ensuring that every employee can parrot back, this is our mission statement, and get every word right, or this is our vision statement. And certainly with values, we want them to understand the essence of those. If you have 5 values, they should understand what those 5 words are. But the person who so carefully crafted the definition of those words, that's not important to us. We think that, and I see your head nodding, we think that it's much more important that they understand the essence so that they can actually live them and activate them in the work that they do.
I agree, because you're more likely to own it if you're just repeating something because you've been told it and it doesn't actually have any meaning behind it. They are just words.
Yes.
But when you actually describe, say, if your value is honesty, describe what that actually looks like rather than just the word. So
exactly. I often say, and we certainly didn't make this up, but culture is going to form whether you're intentional about it or not. So when we lean in and we're much more intentional, we often get asked, well, what's the right time to work on culture? It's today. It's not going to get better if there's a challenge. So you've got to lean into it today and start to shape it.
And pay attention to it, because it continuously evolves and changes and shifts.
That's right.
And there's external factors as well as internal. So yeah, it's constantly evolving, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
That's really, really useful. So what would one piece of advice be? It's normally my last question to my guests. What would one piece of advice be to our listeners about building and maintaining a positive workplace culture?
Mm-hmm.
I know I've put you on the spot.
No, that's okay. Well, you can see my shirt says "Be Human" on it.
Yeah.
I think that is fundamentally a piece of building a strong culture. Again, it's not showing up and being optimistic and positive all the time with everybody. That's not realistic. We don't do it in our home lives. We shouldn't be doing it in our work lives. That does not build trust. We launched this Be Human community just a couple of weeks ago, actually. And the idea was to have people share good ideas to be human. Simple ideas. That one of the common ones we're seeing so far is just smile at people.
Yeah.
Make that human connection, or open the door for somebody and say good morning. Little things that are getting lost because we all went into lockdown phase with the pandemic. We got used to working from home. Now, at least here in the US, but I know it's happening in other parts of the world as well. Companies are saying we're back in our buildings again. Maybe it's only 3 days a week, but some are saying, no, we're back 5 days. Like, we're back to normal. What we're finding is, of course, people are struggling with that because for a few years, they had the luxury of not having to commute into an office. So we've launched this community for no other reason than to take our belief in involvement at the involvement practice and bring it out into the world to help people think more about how to be human at work, how to be human in their communities, so that we can start to be more positive, more open. And all we're doing is just collecting ideas and sharing them back to help people practice new behaviors. So that's how I'd answer the question. I think it's important that we we just remember that we're working with human beings. They're not just colleagues or coworkers. We need to be human.
Oh, I'm going to leave it there. I can't beat that. Tim, thank you so much. I've
Thanks,
thoroughly
Jen.
enjoyed that.
Well, I appreciate you having me on. If people are looking for more information, they can find us at theinvolvementpractice.com. And I would love your listeners to go to the Be Human page where they can share an idea. And that is just be-human.today. There's no .com, it's just be-human.today. You can find that in the footer of our site as well.
Lovely. And I will make sure that I include all of that in the platforms that we share the podcast on so that people can easily find it and go on and share their ideas and their initiatives and what it means to them to be human.
I love that. Such a joy to talk to you. It's nice to find a kindred spirit who believes in culture and works to facilitate healthy culture.
Oh, thank you so much, Tim.